that's where it's headed with Gen Z. They want that micro-targeted, those small events, the micro marketing that feels like it's just for them. But that year 2, when we worked with them and worked on our process to find the right story, they went from 670 to 1.1 million. And broke all records. I realized I might actually be doing more harm than good in telling all the stories of failures. Don't start at the money. That's always a mistake. Because let's say you're successful and you make it, you're still not going to love what you do. You start with the why. And if you want to have a successful business, I think the biggest thing you have to realize is the thing that you got into this to do, create beautiful pictures, edit a masterful piece, is not what you're going to be doing the majority of the time. A business isn't a business until you can walk away from it and it's still making money without you, right?
Jason, thank you very much. I reached out to you, and I have been telling you off camera that I admire a lot what you do, even though this is the first time that we're talking, which is
Thank you.
crazy.
Yeah, no, it's a long time coming. I see you on LinkedIn all the time. I love your stuff too, and it's really cool to be talking to you.
Jason, for those who are not familiar with you, please tell those viewing who's Jason Ellinger and what do you do?
So, who is Jason Ellinger? That is a longer conversation. But what I do is a bit more.
YouTube doesn't have a limit, so you can go.
Okay, all right. So, what do I start with? What we do. So, Beard and Bowler is a commercial filmmaking company. We're commercial filmmakers that help nonprofits raise funds and awareness through the power of storytelling via video. In particular, our specialty is the mission moment video that you play right before the big ask at a gala. Been nicknamed the wallet opener, helps soften up the crowd and get them to a point emotionally till they're ready to take a next action. And we kind of, that's our niche. That's all we promote to is nonprofits. But in promoting to that niche, we've attracted a good amount of for-profit, including large PR agencies that have big pharma clients. And you know what's funny? The same story formula works across the board to get people to buy a product as it does to get people to donate. We just have an advantage because we play our stuff in front of crowds of 300, 500, 1,000 people and get to see real-time reactions. Mm-hmm. And we know that we failed if donation numbers don't go up from what they were previous years. They always do a little better, but like, when you've got a hit, that is the one that we should try and mimic. So we started studying our hits and figuring out which one is going to be a hit and how did we get there, and then kind of developed our process for storytelling backwards from there.
I like also the description in your LinkedIn profile saying that you are a magic video maker, correct? Yes, video magic maker. Video magic maker. We help nonprofits and purposeful brands generate more revenue and awareness. That's where that came from.
So there was this, whenever I brought on new editors, I always had to have them take it to 80% and I would do the rest. And I could not articulate what that other 20% was that I did that just got it from like, wow, really good to like, oh, I'm changed as a person. And it wasn't until I figured out how to articulate that it was just pauses, dramatic pauses, and inserting space so people had time to think, and the sound bites that were important and powerful had time to breathe. And then lining that up with the crescendo of the music and the best piece of B-roll that you had, that is where all of the magic happened, where you pushed everybody to this one point in the video where it was like, oh. Once I figured out how to articulate that and pass that off to my team, that was the magical part that I added. And then as we started doing a lot more events and started partnering with event producers for the nonprofits and people that they were working for, we started getting into this thing called the same day edit. where we'd shoot video, edit, and then cut it, turn it around like an hour or two later. And event producers loved it. They call it the hush video because nothing quiets down a crowd quicker than seeing themselves on camera in the same thing they're wearing from earlier that day in slow motion, synced to the beat of a music track, right? So when people saw that, they were like, that's magical. And we just kept pushing the limits with that, and like doing interactive video where I'd say something in the video and I'd pause. My business partner would be in the crowd shouting back at the screen like a crazy person. And we really try and push the envelope every time we do one of those, just to make it more experiential, because that's where it's headed with Gen Z. They want that micro-targeted, those small events, the micro marketing that feels like it's just for them, the experiences. And the older generations like that too, but like that's where it's headed. So creating those magical moments where you're either wowed or everybody in the room is feeling the same thing at the same time. And that is, if you have a speaker at an event and it's a good event, you get that one in every 4 or 5 events. Yeah. And our goal was to duplicate that and see how we could bring that to like a consistent basis on events where people are feeling that same thing at every event, as close to guaranteed as possible. Because you're not guaranteed that every time with the speaker. Even if that same speaker comes back, you may not get that same magic that you had first time around. So that's the magic.
And I'm seeing your magic because your team is working behind the scenes, giving us all those shots, and I can see that you go beyond the traditional to deliver. One of the things that gets my attention very often when I read your content or when I see your YouTube channel is, we are creating $1 million videos. Can you elaborate on that? Because it's when you are creating a video that has an direct impact in the activities of a nonprofit, and the pressure is probably higher than just a video for my wedding or just a video for an advertising.
Yeah, it's we work with nonprofits. It's easy to get caught up in like just making money, and you have to live and you have to hit burn rate for your company. But you're taking money that is like almost sacred, right? That could be helping people, get clean from an addiction, not be homeless, stand up from a wheelchair, right? So if you're taking that, you better be responsible for it and be a good steward of it. So we like to say, I just got off a discovery call before this, and I was telling them, we need to at least make back your investment. We want to try and do that night one, if not double or quadruple it, and then continue to make that investment back. And if we can't do that, and if we're not even brought back for year 2, we consider it a failure, right? Mm-hmm. So some of our biggest successes were working with nonprofits where they were doing 570, 670 in one night, and then introducing the right story. And it took 2 years to do this the first time around, because the first story was cool and all, right? And it maybe brought them from 570 to 6, so an extra $100,000, which is great, right? But that year 2, when we worked with them and worked on our process to find the right story, they went from 670 to 1.1 million. Wow. And broke all records. And when you're seeing like a $400,000 increase in one night for a nonprofit, you sit back and you're like, I think we have something here that could be life altering for some of these nonprofits. And the crazy thing is, that's just where it started. They were able to take that asset and bring it to a group of a celebrity chef where the relationship had been closed. He saw the video. He saw the impact that their culinary school had in rehabbing people from drug abuse and substance abuse, and said, got emotional. What can we do to help? How can I get involved? Started a brand new fundraising event with all of his New Jersey celebrity chef friends that brought in $200,000 its first night. And now continues year after year to be a thing that was born from an emotional moment that we created that was the catalyst for pushing this forward, a brand new fundraising opportunity that wasn't there before because the relationship was closed, right? And then taking that same piece, bringing it to a small family foundation, touching the rector of this family foundation, who was big into real estate and was just a very fortunate man, and saying, okay, you have a commitment. 2 million over 2 years is what I'm going to give to your organization. So not only 400K night one, right? But then 200K plus yearly for 4 or 5, however long they've been doing this. And then 2 million over 2 years. That's the type of result that we want to see from like a sub 6-figure investment to be a 7-figure return. Like, that's huge for us. And, to try and duplicate that as many times as possible is the goal. And yeah.
Would you say that in your case, is this a formula that you found the formula, you are just grabbing from here, from there? Because you mentioned, I think, storytelling here a couple of times, and we have been reading again about you and the storytelling. And I remember that the first learning lesson that my first boss told me when I started in news, and we're going to discuss about it later, was like, it's not about the numbers, it's not about the stats, it's about the stories of the people that you can tell and how you tell them. Could we say that you found a formula on how to produce these videos, Jason?
Yeah, we kind of stumbled into it backwards, right? Like when we got that first record-breaking gala, we were like, what was this? And then we actually did another one that did better, but it wasn't near like we brought cameras because we thought there was going to be like a huge increase and a reaction, and it was better, but it wasn't that first one. And we're like, okay, what didn't we do here that we did here? And then even in reading about it, it's not our formula, right? Disney, Pixar have mastered this for years, right? But Donald Miller, Story Brand, fantastic book if you ever want to start from square one for story, and where a lot of these elements of story are pulled from. And the difference was we told a story about the organization, making this nonprofit the hero instead of the people that they serve. And that was the biggest difference in what was a record breaker to what was just a little bit bigger, right? And it was through that failure that we were like, okay, how can we not fail again? And even though it did better, right? They made their money and investment back. Like, it was a failure to us because it wasn't that wow that we had that, clip one, we call it, right? So realizing that even though nonprofits are doing great things, they're saving the world, they're still not the heroes of their story. The people that they serve are the heroes of their story. Taking that, bringing it over to corporate, same thing. The people that you serve, your customers, your clients, they're the heroes of the story. You're just the guide, the Obi-Wan, the Yoda that's taking them from point A to point B. And that's how you have to position yourself. You can't position yourself as a hero, as a brand. So that was the biggest difference in figuring out that piece, and then developing a formula or working with the 7 elements of story to create pieces that were actually going to make an impact.
Jason, I want to take a step back in your life and talk about your beginnings, because you have not been shy about sharing. Let me. Is that a Stanley? I don't know. My wife got me a Stanley.
I don't know. Me a Stanley too. That's where we started, and then it just eventually got bigger. They don't fit in the cup holders anymore.
I don't know, and I don't know if you recall that these things were not. I don't know how old are you, but this thing was they were not cool 20, 30 years ago. They were like, and you look at us, the both of us in this one.
That's a stat. She's got them in all the colors.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Thanks to TikTok. So, Jason, let's talk about your beginnings, because you started, you were, if I'm not wrong, a camera operator in news. How did you get into this part of the business, and how was that for you?
Yeah, so even before the news, I started in 2007. So back then, I was doing it with video. I launched with what was considered a luxury item back then, kind of like websites when they first came out. Like, I don't need that, right? Video was still highly a luxury item for a lot of smaller brands, and just in time for 2008 and that recession. And so fast forward a few years later, I'm getting married. I need some stability, benefits, sold my motorcycle, a whole bunch of stuff to like change my whole lifestyle, right? And it's no regrets, right? But being an entrepreneur at the time, just starting out, is not exactly a stable position. You're feeding the business money instead of it feeding you, right? So I took on a day job with the news. I became a hard news photojournalist, and that meant I would shoot my own stories. I would edit them. I would interview people, like literally one man band, they call it. Hold the camera, hold out the microphone. Talk to me about this event. What's going on here today? Great turnout, huh? Like same questions you'd have all the time, right? And that was my job day in, day out. I had the 4 a.m. to noon shift. So luckily that 4:30 was a lot of times when all the riffraff would disappear. But you'd still get there to see the bullet holes or the fire or whatever it was. Fires every time it got a little cold, there's always a fire somewhere, right? And always on breaking news. So that's kind of where I got my start in news. And it wasn't until I think my second 11-year-old's funeral where someone, a reporter just kind of nudged me without even looking up, just, hey, go get the mom. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, go interview the mom. Like, if we don't have sound for this package, it's just another stat. It doesn't matter. Like, nobody cares, right? So I go over, and as I'm interviewing this weeping mom with this pool of other reporters and operators around me who had just lost their son, I'm still kind of self-justifying it to myself. Like, maybe somebody will see this. Maybe somebody will learn. Maybe I won't be back here again. And then I'd be back the next month, the next week, the next day sometimes. For the same sort of thing, same sort of violence. And I realized at that point, just seeing the candles, the cards, the stuffed animals on a telephone pole. If you're in the hood, it's a t-shirt that's stapled to a telephone pole with all the signatures on it, or outside the deli, the corner store, right? Those are the things that were ingrained in my mind day after day. And I realized I might actually be doing more harm than good in telling all the stories of failures, as opposed to the 1 in 4, 1 in 6 nonprofit story that had a good PR team that made the news for something positive, right? And that's when I kind of met with my guide, and I was like, what can we do that would make a difference here? What do you want to do? And I said, it's still video. It's still, I still think that has the most power to impact lives, especially in the day and age of social media where something can go viral. But he said, okay, well, what kind of video? I was like, I don't know. I just want to, whoever's going to pay me, make some money, got to make a living out of this, got to get out of the news. And he's like, no, let me rephrase this. If you could do any type of video that you wanted, what would it be? And I thought back to the time where, when you're in the news, there's this camaraderie. It's not like Anchorman where everyone's trying to kill each other and like, oh, Channel 4, it's a competition. It's the camaraderie. It's like, hey, you need a brick? Let me give you a battery. I got you, man. Whatever you need. And you develop relationships with these people, until that one perp comes out that everyone crowds around and you need to get your interview, right? You need to have priority. Yeah. But other than that, when it's slow, there's just a lot of downtime. There's just a lot of downtime in talking to people. And so this hard news photojournalist who worked for the Record, and still photographer, they saw a lot of stuff. They were at a lot of things. And he's like, there's this guy by the name of Willie on the corner of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. And for whatever reason in the hood, when streets are named after these people, like stuff goes down on those streets. I don't know why. I didn't make the rule, but like stuff just goes down. And he's at the intersection of that and Rosa Parks Boulevard, right? So across from 2 burned down buildings, very, very sketchy, derelict area, there is this beautiful community garden that just appeared out of nowhere. And turns out this man, Deacon Willie Davis, started a community farm at the age of 70, created a nonprofit, already having a full-time job. Couldn't even get anything to grow in this community garden, had to bring in his own dirt to get something to grow on this toxic ground, and took 2 empty plots of land and created this beautiful, lush community garden. He brings kids in, mentors them, teaches them how to work the dirt and the earth with their hands, right? Every other weekend in the summer, he'd hold a farmer's market. And if you couldn't afford to donate, you just take a bag of vegetables, a bag of fruit, a light in a very dark area. And what started to happen around him was the burned down buildings got fixed, and now there's a nice corner store there. There's a community fridge there. The people are not, they know not to touch Willie's corner, right? Like no matter what crimes, they don't touch Willie's garden.
Yeah.
Like it's just this little sanctuary in the middle of this very dark area. And I thought to myself, that's the story I would tell. If that story could be told, it could inspire the mom from the town over to do something the same, because it's such a small thing that could have huge impact. And I was like, that's the story I tell all day, every day. And my guide looking at me is like a little emotional at this point, saying, I tell that story too. Like if I could, it's just, there's no money in it. If you could figure that out, then like, yeah, let's do it. And I'm like, isn't that what you're here for? You're helping me figure this out, right? So the very important thing there that I tell any entrepreneur or business owner is that we found the why there, which is where you start. Don't start at the money. That's always a mistake. Because let's say you're successful and you make it, you're still not going to love what you do. You start with the why, and everything kind of branches out from there. And if you're able to find the why, then everything kind of falls into place after that.
And what a powerful story. What a powerful story. One of the things that I hear you talking about, or one of the things that I notice when I hear you talking about, is that, man, you are a video magic maker, but you're also a businessman. And that's not something that, and I'm saying that out of a point that I see you with admiration, because not everybody can get to have your own company, to build a story, to have a story to tell, and a team that you have built. How did you start those first days? How did you find Matt, your partner in crime? And what would it be besides the why, the next action that somebody in our industry, or in any industry, but I guess in our industry, need to tackle to begin that journey as a business owner, whether it is a production company, whether you are doing just the editing side, whether you are just doing renting or equipment? What is that action that you will take after the why?
So in that period from 2007 to 2016, where I had started my video company and then went to the news, but was still working my video company on the side, that was years of failures but also lessons, right? So I had all that time to learn and grow there and know what not to do, so that when we started Beard and Bowler, we know what not to do. And I had these things, like, even though my business partner was the more well-read, maybe even smarter than me, I had these things that I didn't trust at first, my instincts and my instincts, right? And that was from years of like failures or recognizing a troubled client, right? And it's just one of those things that you only get from experience. So when I first started, I think the biggest mistake I had was I didn't know what sales was. I didn't have leads. I didn't have a process for getting them. I didn't have a sales process for closing said leads. That was one of the biggest things. And there was no processes. There was just artists. And I think in this industry, especially, there's a lot of that. And it's funny, whenever I post about the business side of things, I get all these artists commenting, like cinematographers, freelance, like, can we have a conversation? How are you doing? How are you getting from here to here? And the problem with artists is we like to create, and that's what we want to do. And we don't think about process. We don't think about sales. We don't think about business. And it's only because I'm insanely stubborn and have done this for a decade and like forced and willed my way to figure out the other side of things that I'm still here, right? Like, Grant Cardone, however you feel about him, in this book, the 10X, just 10X is, it takes 10 times more effort, 10 times more money, and 10 times more time than you think it's going to take to build into successful. And most people give up far too early. But there's another group of people that give up like right before the finish line and don't realize that, hey, why I'm doing this and that, and why isn't this happening? You got to do this, that, and then the other for 10 times longer than you think, and with 10 times more effort than you think to get anywhere, right? And we get in these, as artists, we get in these boom bust cycles. Like, why do I have this feast mode where it's like, oh yeah, restaurants, more caviar, right? And then the next month, one cinematographer freelancer that I worked with and hired described to me like, does anybody love me? Like, that's the next month that they're feeling, right? And it's because you had all this work and then you had to stop. You did this networking, this connecting, this sales, even though you didn't realize what you were doing, connecting, sending messages on LinkedIn, networking, like that's all sales and business development. But then you got these jobs and you took your foot off the gas of sales and had to execute. And then what happens 90 days from that? Things start to slow down. And that's why we start hustling again, getting back on LinkedIn, getting back on Instagram, networking again, right? That can't stop ever. And that's the hardest thing. Even when you're in this big project, the biggest project, you can't stop doing sales. You have to find a way to get a half hour of sales and biz dev in, even when it's busy. And investing in that infrastructure when times were busy, when we had those feast cycles, I try and invest in that infrastructure so I wouldn't get caught up in executing, right? And if you want to have a successful business, I think the biggest thing you have to realize is the thing that you got into this to do, create beautiful pictures, edit a masterful piece, is not what you're going to be doing the majority of the time if you want it to be successful. You are no longer editor. You are no longer cinematographer. You are business owner. And you could be cinematographer. You could be freelance. You could get a lot of word of mouth. But like if you want to be successful beyond just you and create a business that's making money if you're not working, right? Like you have to become a business person and study business and sales and marketing and processes. So that's this, when people ask me like, how do you do this? Like, how do I go from here to here? Like, what would you say to me just starting out? I'd say, don't, like don't do it. And if you absolutely still have to, then just understand that you may not be doing what you love to do, maybe like 20% of your job for a good long couple of years until you've built process to where you can just like hop in on the things you love. But you're going to be business owner over creative to be successful at it.
And I think you, at some moment, you end up loving that part of business ownership as well, because you are creating and building something that it's yours, that somehow you still have some sort of freedom, quote unquote, if we can call it, that you manage your own time. You can tell your team, hey guys, today we're working 24/7 because we need to finish this project, but tomorrow morning you might just call them and say, hey, I'm going to take my boy to school in the morning, so move all my meetings, move everything, which is something that if you are an employee, most of the times you cannot do that.
Yeah. Yeah, they know Tuesdays and Thursdays are taking Elijah to school, so I'm gonna show up late, 9:45, 10. But like, it's important for me to be available for those days for drop off, right? So you get that freedom, but it doesn't come. And I also try and give my team freedom, even if it's like, I got to get a haircut and it's the only time. Okay, I mean, you got your schedule. It's I'm doing the same thing. I'm leaving work early on Friday to get a cut. You need to come in late. That's fine. Make it up some other time. So I try and give people we're working with too, like that flexible freedom as well. So it's not that corporate-y sort of thing, but it takes hard work and like a little bit of an obsession with process to get to that point, so that my hands don't have to be on everything. And we're starting to hit that last year and this year, which is a really cool thing to see, like stuff just happening without me.
Jason, one thing that I like about what you publish or what you record on video is that you not only talk about your highs, and I told you earlier, I have read things about your lows. I have read the challenges that you have had as a business owner. I have read the challenges that you have had personally. Um, and I think that is something that we, no matter the industry, but especially in the broadcasting industry, would sometimes, or the video production, sometimes, oh, it's no, it's so fancy, it's so a lot of lights and big events and everything. But when something fails, nobody talks about it, and you do it. Um, what is the reason behind it?
Um, just being true to storytelling and the rules of it in general. I think you almost have to. And I keep coming back to Finding Nemo, which my life is a barrage of Disney movies now, Disney Pixar movies, because of my now 4-year-old, right?
Yeah.
And Finding Nemo is, Marlin, they open up the scene with Marlin and his wife celebrating all these kids that they have. Then a fish comes, eats Marlin's wife and all of his children. That is a crazy way to start a Disney movie, right? Like, what just happened here? And like, why would you show this to children? And what they're doing is they're creating a relatable character for you. Even if you can't relate by having your whole family eaten, right? Which I don't know if a lot of us can. You're self-selecting with Marlin because he is facing this extreme hardship. He's not king of the hill. He's not the big shark or whale in the ocean. Like, he's a very small fish who has all odds stacked up against him. And if you don't do that and introduce a problem early or make your character relatable by talking about the lows, all people are going to see is somebody who's not relatable. Oh, he's made it. He's got money. That's all that matters, right? And even so, even with talking about failures constantly in the journey, people are still just going to see if you're a success, you're just a sick overnight success, like easy for you to say, right? So like, you have to talk about the failures if you're going to continue to be relevant to any sort of audience, right? You have to start off with the problem so that people can self-select. Like, oh, I see myself in that person. My nephew went through the same thing. I've got an uncle who had that same problem. I was bullied in high school, right? And once you start hearing the problems, you start self-selecting with that person. And then you look to how did they get out? Where was their guide, right? So just in successful basic rules of storytelling, I think you have to talk about the failures on social or wherever, just to be relatable with your audience.
Speaking of social, I guess many of us self doubt have that self doubt of, oh, what I can tell might not be interesting for everybody. Oh no, it's social media. It's only for influencers, or social media is only for those who want to dance in TikTok or showcase their Stanley Cups or whatever. But I have seen more and more that it's the one of the most powerful tools, especially in an industry like ours, where we have to showcase what we do, and in an industry like ours, where the big jobs are not always published on a job board. What did bring you to social media to start posting, and how has it been your experience with this?
So social media is a bear, right? It's like this huge thing. And people get overwhelmed so easily because, rightfully so, you're seeing creators on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, all at the same time. And you're like immediately overwhelmed, not even realizing those people may have teams, right?
Yeah.
And what we have this conversation a lot, especially with nonprofits where resources are limited. So don't feel bad. This is like an everyone problem. Even large companies, $50, $100 million a year companies struggle with this problem of how to keep consistent, regular, relevant content on social. So if you are doing anything on social that is anywhere near consistent and of quality, pat yourself on the back, right? Mm-hmm. Even if it's only once a week, right? But we tell everybody like, hey, we give you permission to only pick one platform and focus on that. The key is to find out where your audience is. For some, it might be Instagram. For some, for us, it's LinkedIn because it's business to business. And for others, it might be Facebook because it might be that the older demographic that you need to hit, right? So, and then for the younger, maybe it's TikTok, right? There's people still trying to figure out how to monetize that, right? But like, find your audience, pick that platform, and go hard after that. Build up the content bank so there's no pressure. So you pick a day where an hour or two of like shooting and then writing out your copy, which is hugely important. And then have a content bank, and don't even start until you have that bank of content. And then speak directly to your target audience. One of the things that we decided beginning of last year was that we're not going to reinvent the wheel. You know, Gary Vee just talks to his audience. Problem was, we're not Gary Vee. We're not doing a speaking engagement to 10,000 every other week, right? So what we decided to do was every time we're on a podcast, we're recording this now for content, right? Every time we do end up speaking, we record that for content. And if there's no speaking events or engagements or even things that we can make up to speak to a handful of people, then I have one of my guys just give me a ride home in his car.
I've seen it.
Put the camera on the dash, and he asked questions that our target audience asks all the time. And I would just respond. That was content. A 20-something minute drive home ended up with like half a dozen pieces of social media sometimes, right? Not to mention stills or whatever could be cut from the content that was transcribed from that, right? So like, first of all, pick a platform, stick with it. Just one, go hard after that. And second of all, document over creating. And that's the biggest pressure we face, especially as creators. We got to create something new, and it's got to be fresh, and it's got to be like, just document and talk about the struggle along the way, right? You know, if you're not confident in talking about it right now because you haven't made it yet, save it, archive it. And then once you overcome that or feel a little more confident, then post it, right? So just documenting. Look up interview prompts on Google, best interview questions to ask, you know, ask yourself those questions, talk about those questions, find frequently asked questions on a website somewhere that your target audience asks all the time. Read them out loud as if somebody's asking you this question. Like, what is the biggest fear when it comes to video? Okay, let me talk about that for a little. You know, like, do your own Q&A. There's a lot of stuff that you can do with an iPhone and a little bit of creativity, and relieving that pressure of building up your content bank before you even start releasing. Just knowing that you got the next 2 to 4 weeks in the bank is a huge pressure relief of like once a day or 5 times a week, 3 times a week, you know?
Yeah. No, it is. Has it worked for you?
So at first we were doing a lot of our own content just because we felt we had to, and we had to be present on the platforms. And then we started getting a bit more strategic on it. I brought someone on just to handle like our YouTube content, and my partner helped with devising a plan for that. But what's been more helpful is working with an expert. At first, it's sweat equity. But once you get past that stage and you're able to build up your business and find sources of lead flow, it becomes, okay, now it's either sweat equity and I do it myself, or I find an expert and I become really intentional about it and I set aside a budget. And that's who I work with. So right now, the dirty little secret that we have on LinkedIn is I work with a really good copywriter, and copy is everything. Yes. So it's still all my words. He interviews me once a week. He asks me questions that are relevant to my target audience or the goal that we're trying to hit. And I'll give him like 3 5-minute voice prompts. And he takes that, all of my ramblings, and he turns it into a consumable post that people who are scrolling by can stop and be like, oh, wow, cool. That's 3 easy ways, bullet point, emoji, right? And then a hook too. You got to hook your reader. So there's a whole process for doing social the right way. Yes. And once we invested in that, we saw like an immediate ROI, because it was something like, this is his area of expertise. You know, like, I know how to edit a video. I may not be a social media expert, right? I worked with somebody who was, and that's when we started seeing exponential growth, and grew to almost double right now in our following, which just adds, and then the growth becomes exponential, right? Once you hit a certain point, but that adds so much credibility and authority the fact that even if it's not bringing in $1 million right away, when they look at your audience and they see your content and they see people are engaging and it's relevant and they're excited about it. Oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. He's an authority in this space. And that's the biggest thing. You get invited to speak. Oh, he can write. He must be able to speak. I'm terrified of speaking, right? When it's not on camera. Oh, he can write. Let me have him on my podcast, right? And those like today, those are the opportunities that present themselves. And then because we're documenting as opposed to creating, we have all this content that's like, oh, he's on podcasts a lot. Oh, he's speaking, and it adds even more. And it's kind of like that compound effect. So that's what social really does. Occasionally you'll get some person like, that was amazing, we need to work together, right? You may get that once or twice a month if you're lucky. But really it's building authority. And then from those speaking events and the social media from the speaking events, we get a lot of leads from that. So that's practically what it does for you. But it is a journey, right? So you just got to commit to it.
And you have to look for the tools that are going to be effective. And I think that's a great mindset, because that's the difference. Sometimes we want to do everything, and we realize, just like you have been realizing, that the moment that you put in place the systems to make things happen and the flywheels that are going to push the other parts. So those are the ones, the processes that are going to make you successful and are going to give you more time to be doing what you want to do. Jason, being mindful of time, what's next for you? Where are you heading to?
Okay, so there's a couple ways you can go with that, but I'll tell you our big goal. Our mission is to tell stories that are going to inspire others to positive action, just like Willie's story, how it could inspire so many people if told. The next part of that is distribution. How do we get that story in front of people? Mm-hmm. So one of my personal goals is to grow our following, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whatever it is. I'm leaning more towards YouTube because, we're video guys, to such a state that if a nonprofit were to be featured on our channel, they would just be made, like almost like an extreme home makeover or the Shark Tank effect. I had someone who used to work for me developed a natural deodorant, went on Shark Tank, did a deal with Barbara Cochran for like 20 grand. And in the following 2 months of the premiere, did more business in those 2 months than they had in the entire existence of their business. And that's the Shark Tank effect. And they actually backed out of their deal with Barbara because it didn't make sense anymore because they were so huge and needed to expand, right? To have that sort of effect on nonprofits, where if they were to come on, people are like, wow, so many people now know about them. Maybe they get a bunch new recurring donors because this has been Beard and Bowler validated nonprofit told through a meaningful story. Like that's the biggest goal that I have, where we can actually make a difference. And if we need to do vlogs or personal branding to get there, cool. But like to have that platform where we could just feature these good stories out there of life-altering transformation that nobody knows about, that's the huge end goal. And then the personal selfish goal, because there's always one of those. I heard an agency owner say this to me once, and it just kind of stuck with me. He's like, my goal is to make myself irrelevant at my own company. And I'm like, how could you say that? How dare you, sir?
How dare you?
What are you thinking about? I love what I do and I want to continue doing it. But like, I understood it as I got more into it that, and you do 12 different jobs as an entrepreneur, right? And to find like one person that maybe it'll take 2 or 3 of those jobs off of your plate and do it well. And then keep going and building and repeating that process until basically all the little parts of your job are taken and maybe you just step in where needed. To go on a vacation without a laptop or your phone on fire because you're on Slack at dinner or on the pool, right? And just like, what am I doing? Like to do that and to be able to walk away and the business is still making money is the personal selfish goal that I have. And
That's
people
wealth.
even say that business, right? A business isn't a business until you can walk away from it and it's still
Yes.
making money without you, right? And that
Yes.
was a hard truth for me, but now it's become a goal for me.
Love it. Jason, thank you very much. I really enjoyed the conversation with you. I'm leaving for all the details in the description of the video so people can reach out to you, can follow up on LinkedIn, and can follow up your YouTube channel. I love the
Yeah.
shorts. I love those driving home conversations, and I cannot do
Thanks.
anything else. That, but thank you, and hope that we can keep the communication open, and I keep learning from you and everything that you guys do.
Yeah. Likewise, man. I got to get up on your newsletter too. I got to subscribe to that.
I'll
I love
send
that
you a
you're putting
link
out
there.
content too.
Thank you.
Okay,
I
good. I'll
appreciate
get
it.
you my link tree too. So appreciate you having me on, and um, love being a guest. Honored to be on here.